Welcome, everyone, to the Information's TITV. My name is Akash Pasricha. It is Thursday, April 16th. Anthropic has officially released its new Claude Opus 4.7 model. The company says it is better at long-running tasks and better at handling images. The Information exclusively reported earlier this week that Anthropic was working on this model, and I spoke with Stephanie Palazzolo yesterday. She was the reporter who broke that news. You can check out more of her analysis on our YouTube page. We will link the video in our show notes. Today on the show, the Information has exclusive reporting on Google's discussions with the Pentagon. We'll bring on our Google reporter, Erin to share with us what she has learned. Plus, our e-commerce reporter, Ann Gehan, published exclusive reporting about OpenAI's plans for new pricing for its ChatGPT ads. And our Apple reporter wrote a really interesting story about members of the company's Siri division going to a coding boot camp ahead of a major product revamp. And we will wrap the show today with a segment with our partner, PwC. We are talking about the implications AI is having on how companies play in the value chain. It's going to be a fun show, so let's get right on into it. The Information published exclusive reporting that Google is in talks with the government for a new AI deal. Our Google reporter, Erin broke that story. She joins me now to discuss things. Erin, what do we know about these talks on this new deal?
Yeah, so Google is in the process of negotiating with the Pentagon a deal to put its Gemini AI models onto classified systems. The talks are still ongoing, but everything that I hear is that they are progressing towards a deal. People feel good about these talks.
Okay, so what is this deal supposed to be? How does it compare and contrast to the other deals that we heard Anthropic was negotiating and the deal that OpenAI inevitably did end up signing with the Pentagon?
So I want to emphasize that the situation is still fluid and this could change. But the deal that Google is negotiating with the Pentagon appears to be pretty similar to the deal that OpenAI ultimately got with the Pentagon. And so they're discussing an agreement to let the Pentagon use Google's AI models for all lawful use. Google has also proposed some language that would potentially prevent Google's AI models from being used for domestic mass surveillance, autonomous weapons, including target, without what they call, quote, appropriate human oversight. And so they're also similar to the provisions that OpenAI ultimately got in their deal.
Right. And just to recap, these are the provisions that Anthropic wanted, couldn't get. OpenAI signed the deal, and then they kind of snuck in those provisions after the fact, right?
Yeah, so these are the provisions that Anthropic essentially refused to drop. So Anthropic refused to drop safeguards on using its AI for fully autonomous lethal weapons um, and for mass domestic surveillance. OpenAI's deal includes provisions about this, but lawyers I talked to at the time criticized this deal for saying that essentially these extra provisions that they put in didn't actually prevent these things because OpenAI had also agreed to all lawful use.
Okay. How big is this deal for Google?
So this is a continuation of the $200 million deal that Google signed with the Pentagon last summer. So this is a sizable deal, but it's obviously very small for Google compared to its overall revenue.
And remind us here, Erin. I mean, we've talked on the show about these deals and why they're important. Is the idea here that if Google can show that we can satisfy even the strictest requirements from customers around how our technology is used, or maybe just if we can satisfy the government, we should be able to satisfy any other commercial customer. Is that the logic here?
Right. I mean, I think it would certainly be a signal to commercial customers, but really this is the outgrowth of a years long process with Google to rebuild its relationship with the Pentagon. So in 2018, Google famously declined to renew its Project Maven contract with the military after there was a huge employee outcry about it. And so that really became like the primary example of what liberal tech activism. And in the years since, they've set up this whole Google public sector division. They've changed the AI principles that they published in the wake of that episode. And so they're really trying to break back into military work, and this deal would be a continuation of that.
Did you get any color on how employees are reacting to these discussions going on right now?
So honestly, the answer is I don't think employees know about them. So one of the big
But
themes
now you
in
reported it, so now they
yeah,
know.
please reach out to me on Signal. I think it'll be really interesting to see how employees react to this deal. So there is a lot of employee unhappiness about the OpenAI deal, which is seems to be quite similar to this deal. So it'll be interesting to see if there's protests about this deal, if people are unhappy, or if at this point people are like, okay, like this is what we expected to be happening.
Now, on the flip side, I wonder if you got any color on how people in the Pentagon feel towards Google, because I know that. Look, I mean, we've talked about Emil Michael, the former Uber executive that is now sort of running tech for the Pentagon in many ways. They have all these connections to Silicon Valley. They have allegiances. They have rivalries. How do people in the Pentagon feel towards Google specifically?
Yeah, so I think that the relationship has warmed a lot in the past few years. Like, obviously, the Pentagon is a big place. Like, not everyone feels the same way. But people I talked to who are fairly close to this said that it seems like the Pentagon has really gotten over their distrust of Google after Project Maven. Like, if anything, compared to Anthropic, Google is now viewed as more of the adult in the room. So they have a closer relationship with the Pentagon than the other frontier labs, OpenAI and Anthropic, because of these years that they've put into building the relationship and hiring like ex-government workers, ex-government contractors, veterans. At the same time, though, they are still the third place cloud provider behind Amazon and Microsoft.
And last question for you, Aaron. I mean, if you just take a step back and think about why this story is important, why the idea of tech companies doing work with the government is important. I mean, I think it's very clear we should be paying attention to this, but
Yeah.
I wonder if there is a broader trend here that you are observing, which is, I don't. Is it a national security story? Is it a story about AI in the government? Like, I'm just trying to sort of put this into context.
Yeah, I think I mean, really all of those things. Like, I would say that over the past year and a half, one of the most interesting stories has been tech company and AI companies, in particular, relationship with the Trump administration, how companies in many ways have tried to cozy up to the Trump administration in a way that we certainly did not see during Trump 1. So I think this is interesting in light of that. But it is also specifically an AI story. Like AI is becoming much more powerful and what AI is able to do, the kinds of deals that these companies are able to make. I mean, this is stuff that's going to start to have, if not already is having real world impact.
Well, yeah, and also we know that Anthropic has this new model out,
Yeah.
Mythos. I'm talking not the model that they released today, which is separate. But I mean, once again, it could just be a matter of time, where until Google or OpenAI has their own version of that model and has to decide, well, are we giving it to the government? What does that relationship look like? And that obviously starts with these discussions, which is let's just start with the plain vanilla models and figure out to what extent the government is going to use those. So, a really interesting set of discussions. Aaron, I want to thank you for coming on and sharing with us what you know. That is Aaron Wu, our Google reporter here on TITV. OpenAI is making a big change to its ads product. That is according to an exclusive report from Ann Gehan, the information's e-commerce reporter. I want to bring her on to share with us more what she knows. And what is this change that OpenAI is pursuing?
Hey, Akash. So it's not quite a change. OpenAI is really, really moving to rapidly expand their advertising business, which they just launched at the beginning of February. So, in my story this week, I am writing about how OpenAI has told some advertisers that they'll be launching some new kinds of ad campaigns and some new pricing models. In some cases, in as soon as the coming days. So it really is kind of a super quick ramp up on OpenAI's part. And they're really kind of rapidly moving to try to scale up this ad platform and make inroads with marketers. So in the coming days, some advertisers will be able to set up ad campaigns in ChatGPT that charge advertisers based on how many clicks the ads get, not just how many views the ads get, which is the original pricing model that they launched with back in February. And then they've also indicated that at some point in the near future, they will introduce what is known in the ad industry as conversion-oriented campaigns. So those are ads and campaigns that are aimed at getting people to take a specific action, whether it's making a purchase or downloading an app or creating an account somewhere. So OpenAI has indicated that those kinds of campaigns are also in the works, although it is a little bit less clear what the timeline is for that. So, like I said, it's really kind of less of a change and more just OpenAI kind of laying the groundwork to scale this up as quickly as they can.
So give us a little bit of advertising 101 here, because I mean, in uh, the customer funnel, like a marketing funnel, whatever they call it, right? I mean, impression is the first thing you get, and then you got to click, and then do you actually buy?
Yeah,
That's the funnel
you
of
got it.
conversion. They were prioritizing impressions as a
Yeah.
way of pricing their ads. So is the idea here that they will I mean, they're able to charge more for clicks and conversions? Is it a matter of how you measure it? Or, I mean, what does this mean for that?
Not necessarily. There certainly are different pricing models for these different kinds of campaigns. So I think that is something that OpenAI is clearly working on. We've reported, the initial commitments for the impressions-based ads, the views-based ads, those were quite high. And in talking to several advertisers and several advertising agencies, that was a big kind of piece of feedback from some of them was that, some of these prices for these initial commitments that OpenAI wanted, they were very high. And I think especially because a lot of advertisers still view this as super experimental, it's not something that's becoming a core part of their marketing strategy or their budget yet. I think OpenAI needs to kind of introduce more of this flexibility, more, a wider range of pricing models in order to be able to get more advertisers up and running on the platform. So I think it's not necessarily like higher or lower prices. I think OpenAI just knows if they want to become a serious ad platform that is really, indispensable for marketers, they need to kind of have all these different ad campaigns in order to be taken seriously.
And I kind of view it in a way as it trying to build out the function that, for example, Amazon already has, right? We've had our colleague Catherine Perloff on the show earlier
Mhm.
talking about how Amazon already has a huge ad tech business. They have a lot of advertising experience, and they're
Right.
offering more to the advertisers in
Mhm.
the way of data and stuff like that. So this seems to be OpenAI saying, "Oh boy, we better get our act together."
Right. OpenAI knows they're in the big leagues now, and so
Right.
they've got to very quickly catch up with everyone else. And I mean, they have big ambitions. We've reported that OpenAI has told some of their investors recently they expect more than 2 billion in ad revenue this year, which is crazy. They're just getting this off the ground and already are projecting 2 billion in revenue, and then $11 billion in ad revenue next year, which would make it bigger than Snap, Pinterest, a lot of ad platforms that have been around for, many, many years. So clearly they have big plans.
I was struck by this line in your story. You spoke with somebody who was talking about some of the challenges with advertising in chatbots, period. And this
Right.
was not focused on OpenAI. This is just the new game that we're playing. And the quote here that stood out to me is they said, "It's not a true keyword targeting strategy. Every prompt looks different." Can you explain to me what they might have meant by that, what they were indicating?
Right. So and I think we're seeing this across the ad industry as people try to wrap their heads around what does advertising in chatbots and in LLMs even look like. It's not a one-to-one copy of, maybe the previous era of advertising that was very SEO, very search optimization oriented, where you're putting in lists of thousands and thousands of keywords that you're trying to target your ads around. And because you can't predict what an LLM will say in its response, it's hard to promise advertisers, every time this word is mentioned or this topic is mentioned, your brand will also show up with an ad. So I think that's something that a lot of marketers are really, and the platforms as well too, are trying to really kind of wrap their heads around, like, what does this model even look like? And I think also that kind of unpredictability is making it difficult for, again, both the platforms and the marketers to think about, how do we really measure this? Because I think that's something else that's come up in a lot of my reporting, is that marketers and advertisers are very used to a lot of detail about how their ads are performing, and very granular data and measurement about how their ads are performing. And so I think that's an area where OpenAI will really need to, again, kind of quickly scale up what they can offer advertisers, because that those measurement and tracking capabilities and that access to data, that's definitely, I would say, kind of the number one thing on their list that they're looking for.
Great. Well, Ann, I want to thank you for coming on. That is Ann Gehan, our e-commerce reporter here at The Information. The Information published exclusive reporting about Apple Siri staffers ahead of a big product revamp. Our Apple reporter Aaron Tilley and co-executive editor Amir Afradi wrote that story. Aaron joins me now to share with us what he knows. Aaron, what's going on with Apple Siri staffers?
Yeah, so they did a, fairly sizable reorg again, and they really seem to be focusing and shrinking down the team in a lot of ways. So they're now it's going to be 60 people working on the core Siri product. There's going to be 60 people working on evaluations of the product. And then a big chunk of the team is being moved off of it and onto this multi-week boot camp for AI coding.
So, is this vibe coding? Like, what's the idea here of coding bootcamp?
Yeah, so this is the modern way of coding. It's using AI tools to increase your productivity, and it's obviously sweeping the rest of the tech industry, and including Apple. Apple internally is really starting to adopt these tools quite quickly. Mostly Anthropic, Claude coding tools. So this is just going like wildfire inside the company. And Siri, the Siri team has been around for a while. They're often seen as a bit bloated inside the company. So, it's uncertain to me right now if this is a way of trying to get this team up to snuff, getting them improving their skill sets, or it's a matter of trying to just slim down the team because it's not working well.
Okay, so how does this then relate to the timing of Siri? Because you pointed this out in your story. I mean, we're like what, 2 months away from the big Siri revamp. At least that's what we're expecting. Are these
Yeah.
people not busy working on that?
I mean, they're very busy right now. The whole team is working really hard to get this ready for WWDC, the Worldwide Developers Conference in June, where they always release new software. And yeah, that's really the timing of this reorg is quite interesting, given just how busy they are working towards this goal for this launch. And I think it shows just like how difficult it is, and how maybe like the team isn't structured right for getting this ready. I think they're yeah, under tremendous pressure, and there's a big team that isn't maybe ready for what's to come next. I don't know if their skill set's ready.
And I just want to make one thing clear. So we don't actually know if this coding boot camp is supposed to augment the release of Siri 2 months from now, or if this is more of a long term thing, right? I'm just trying to sort of figure out, because I imagine it's 2 months away. It's got to be like done, right?
No, not no, definitely not done yet.
Not done. Okay, well, I
Uh,
don't know. I mean, it seems like a
sorry,
big.
sorry. No, not done yet. Yeah, it's uncertain if these team members are going to be moved back onto Siri, or they're sort of like permanently out of the group. We don't know that.
Okay. Um, let's just talk about the Siri product broadly. You talk to people in the Apple orbit all day. What level of confidence do these people have that this next iteration of Siri is really going to knock it out of the park the way Apple is hoping?
Certainly executives are projecting confidence among the employee base, working on this. I think there is among some of that group a lot of feeling of being lost and just general sort of disappointment. I think there's a feeling that Apple isn't getting their ducks in a row for this product. I don't know if they're going to manage to pull this off by June. Um, I think it's really, really going to be challenging for them.
Is there a chance you think it might get delayed again?
Um, Never say
I'm just
never.
wondering.
I think
I, I'm just wondering. Like, is it possible? Because they've already pushed it back at least once or twice, right?
yes, yes, they delayed it multiple times. The only thing Apple has had said publicly is that the Siri overhaul will be arriving this year. So
Okay.
they could push it again a few months and they'd still have some wiggle room. But if they don't launch it this year, I think it's going to be an even bigger crisis than when it was last year during the first delay. So, certainly, I mean, they're aiming for June WWDC to launch then, but they could wait till September with the new iPhone launches. They could time it with that. They still have a little wiggle room if they don't launch in June.
Well, at least now they have Google in their toolkit to lean on in terms of the models. So that seemed to be one of the big issues they had to sort out. Aaron, I want to thank you for coming on. That is Aaron Tilley, our Apple reporter here at The Information. Our next segment is with our sponsor, PwC. AI has many companies rethinking where in their industry's value chains they should be playing. Dallas Dolen, a leader at PwC's tech, media, and telco practice, has a front seat to the conversation happening inside those boardrooms. I want to bring him on to share with us what he is seeing. Dallas, welcome back to the show. It's great to have you here.
Hey, it's great to be here, Akash. Good to see you.
So, one of the themes that we've been talking about on the show is this idea that many companies in tech are trying to expand the parts of the value chain that they are playing in. And some of the examples of this, we've seen chip companies say we're going to play in software. We've seen model companies say we're going to develop chips. So, it's happening all around. I wonder if you can give us a bit of a look on the ground as to how your clients are thinking about that.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, we've been thinking about this from a multi-industry point of view for a while. I've used the word convergence. We've talked about that before, but certainly, the biggest thing when you start to think about the downstream effects, it's all about outcomes, right? It's like, what are people actually going to get from this? One major area where we're seeing the question of outcomes and what's going to happen from an industry point of view is actually in telco. The reality is there's been not a lot of talk about telco and AI. I think what's really happening behind the scenes with the telecommunication industry is we really have a revolution, so to say, around artificial intelligence. And it's not just I'm going to use it to speed up something happening in the back office or the front office. It's actually how are they going to use AI to speed up what's happening in every single industry. So the impact of telco, they will drive the actual execution from this is the benefit that each of these industries will get. Think about autonomous driving, right? The only way that autonomous driving really, really works is if you have something at the edge that has all of the power, so to say, of AI at the inference level, not necessarily at the training level, at the inference level, and people, can use it and actually take advantage of that all the way at that distance. And physical AI being probably the most prominent and interesting growing area of application of artificial intelligence when you start thinking about other industries like medicine and retail and even banking. This is the place where I think you have the again, like I said, the revolution of AI for telco and the big investments that are going to come probably over the next 10 years, which they won't rival necessarily all the money that's going into data centers, but it's going to be close. I mean, the data center number was something like 7 trillion has been estimated will be spent between now and 2030. I think we're going to see something approximate to $800 to $1 trillion being spent in telco modernizing the networks, which also, by the way, includes basic principal concepts like privatization and security, and AI is going to enhance those things for telecommunication companies as well.
So I want to get into the telco example in a second here, but
Yeah.
the broader question I have for you is, why is it that AI has forced companies to rethink where in their respective value chains they play? Why is this happening so much more today than it was 4 years ago before ChatGPT really got popular?
Yeah, well, I mean, look, at the end of the day, every company has to think about who their customers are, right? Whether they're B2B or B2C. The whole construct is, how do I drive value to my end user? How do I drive something that's going to be a better experience? And to do it in a way, and by the way, we think about this too in the services industry, do it in a way that still is frankly profitable and is still, empowering, so to say, to their employees and also again to their customers. If you think about AI as just an experience of interacting with a chatbot or something along those lines, there isn't, I mean, that's exciting, but most people have moved beyond the exciting part about that. The question is, how is it really going into the actual hardware or the actual physical experience that people are having, right? So whether you talk about agentic commerce, or you talk about, the things that might be happening within, a person's own home, the experimentation that people have, even on an individual level, that's promulgating into like the enterprise experience and what people are saying as far as, the services and products that they're going to buy. So when we look at like multi-industry, I think what we're seeing, right, is that people are saying, hey, I'm not worried about, the number of seats that I have, as far as people who are like using the product itself. I'm worried about getting that product, right, the AI product, as far down into the thing that I'm delivering to my customer so that they see the value from it as well. And there may be a surcharge associated with that, right? Because who knows what, all the compute costs and the tokens are going to be in the future. But there also may be, an efficiency, play on it as well, which is, hey, things are going to get done faster, right? Call centers, the basic servicing of individuals, from a customer experience point of view, might become a whole lot better and a whole lot more efficient. I think a lot of companies are hoping that that's the case, as it relates to experiential, dynamics. But I think
So it's really it's a control it's a control thing. I mean, if I am going to charge my customers based on an outcome and not so much time used for a product, I need to have more control over what that outcome is. I need to have more under my hood, and I need to then dominate more of or capture more of the value chain myself. That's the idea.
100%. And you want to keep people in the ecosystem. You don't want them, leaving to go get the better experience. And I think one important thing that's going to happen probably in the next, we'll call it 12 to 18 months, is we're no longer going to talk about the AI enhancement or the non-AI enhancement. It's just going to be, did I get the experience that I wanted from the product or did I not? And by the way, probably in most cases, I got the experience that I wanted from most products and services because the service provider or the product provider put some, concept, some element of AI into that product delivery. And that's the thing that's going to be maximizing the outcome for, for a given experience. And again, there's some obvious ones. I mentioned autonomous cars and healthcare. There's some unobvious ones that are out there too. And there's stuff that people are already experimenting with, like the commerce experience, the retail experience, and the like. And obviously everybody experiences it every day with their own personal devices and what they get out of, the things they're carrying in their pockets.
So let's go back to telco now. So you were talking about it earlier. So where were these telco companies? I mean, where traditionally in the value chain have they focused most of their efforts? And then what are the new parts of the value chain that they are now considering playing in because of AI?
Yeah, love the question. I mean, let's be honest. It for forever and ever, it was a focus on dumb pipes. It's like, how do I get the dumb pipe as close as possible to the people and get as many people as possible using the pipe that's close to them? Of course, that's a little bit of a simplification, but whether it was through wireless or whether it was through fiber or whether it was through satellite, and other related technology, that's what they were doing. I think what we're seeing, and it's really started to click, especially with the most recent deal that was announced between Marvell and NVIDIA. It's really starting to click now to say, okay, wait a second, there's a way for telco to drive a whole lot more value all the way to the end. And so back to even the industry conversation we just had, how is it that you would trust a robot that's in an operating room to perform, really precise procedures on a human. Well, the only way you're going to do that is either have a data center next door, or you're going to have a really, really good set of processing chips, whether they're ASICs or MPUs, that are in the edge of the compute, right? That have the ability to do, say, 90% of the things that you'd want it to do. That doesn't have to call home for help. And that's actually where the value proposition comes in for telcos. That's actually, but by the way, the question will be, do they have the ability to surcharge for that, or do they have to simply invest ahead of the curve just to stay, I'd say, close enough to the customers that they already have? I'm optimistic for the telco industry in general that they'll be able to capture that value and provide, not only incremental, services, so to say, just like every other industry, but they'll actually be able to charge something, extra for it, because at the end of the day, they're going to have to spend a lot of money. I think the estimates are, like I said, approximately $1 trillion over the next 10 years that they'll have to spend in modernization, both security chips and the new less dumb pipes themselves. That's a lot of money, and the ability to capture that on a capital investment basis is going to be key, just like it's key for the hyperscalers and for the neo clouds and the rest of them who are spending that money as well.
Last question for you. I mean, what do you think the net impact is of this on who ultimately is a winner in all of these industries? Because it's clear to me everything's getting a lot more competitive, because now whereas you might have had, there were 5 steps in the value chain, you had, maybe 5 companies each playing in each step. Now you have a lot more overlap. And, I guess my question for you is, what is the criteria then for who ultimately wins? Is it who is most vertically integrated? Is it price at the end of the day? Like how do you think about that?
Yeah, it's a great question. I was talking to somebody about this last night, and even this morning too. We're actually having this conversation on the media front, because you have a lot of the same things starting to happen, right? Like, do you want to own the platform and then also be able to attract all the users to your platform so that you can capture, 50+% of the value, and you're simply paying for the content that you're providing through? If you apply that to the hyperscaler, if you apply that to the telcos, if you apply that to the media platform companies, they're all in a similar boat, right? I think they want to have a maximum amount of capital infrastructure that attracts people, whether the people are the content producers, whether they are the AI, foundational model companies, and then, by the way, whether they are the enterprises as well. In some cases, consumers, right? The consumers who would be on those platforms, but they want to attract the maximum number of users, both from an input and a throughput point of view, in order to really have control of as much of the ecosystem as possible. And so, yeah, I mean, the big folks are probably more likely to win than the small. And so you have this value capture, we'll call it program. It's on running right now. That's the capital buildup that's happening with the hyperscalers, in particular. And I think you have the frontier model companies and the neo clouds who are trying to find their place, whether it's to, build their own data centers. I know there's some debt issuance, news this week on that front. So you have these, like little snippets of opportunity that, the newcomers are trying to jump into. But at the end of the day, it's going to be ownership of platform, that probably creates, the most the most value in the chain, and then also gives control over, you said it, control over pricing, and control over the content and who's going where, with the same. So I think, one point that isn't brought up a lot, but probably is worthwhile at some point, people jumping into and thinking about is, what are the regulatory dynamics that might come into play? Right now, we're in a low regulatory environment across most industries, but like, times change, and there's an election this year, and there's an election 2 years from now too, that'll be highly impactful, to regulatory probably. And so companies will need to start anticipating that. That will have a major effect on, not only the companies who are building out these platforms, but also the consumers, right? So it'll be interesting to see how that one plays.
Great. Well, Dallas, I want to thank you for coming on. That is Dallas Dolen, a leader in PwC's tech, media, and telco practice here on TITV. That does it for today's show. I want to do a special shout out to a new billboard up now in Times Square, thanks to our sponsorship with the New York Stock Exchange. Check it out if you are in New York City. It'll be up for the next 2 weeks. A reminder, we are on this stream Monday through Friday at 10 a.m. Pacific, 1 p.m. Eastern. If you can't make it then, episodes are available on theinformation.com, our YouTube channel, or wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to follow us on social media on X, Instagram, and TikTok. I'm already excited for our next show tomorrow. Have a great rest of your Thursday. Bye-bye for now.